All right, so today I want to talk about this story, and it's titled "Official Data Reveals Arctic Sea Ice is Once Again Growing." And I wanted to make a video on this because I always make the claim that climate change is not something that's happening, at least not the human, at least it's not caused by humans. And this is just more data that I've already, more data on top of the stuff that I've already shown to kind of back that issue up. But it says, according to official government data from the National Snow and Ice Data Center, Arctic sea ice is once again growing, with current 2020 levels exceeding 8 out of the 10 previous years. And that's pretty significant. And the climate alarmists kind of speak out of both sides of their mouth. On one hand, they're like, yeah, ocean levels are going to rise to the point to where cities are going to get flooded. But on the other hand, they'll see stories like this and they'll say, oh, well, more ice means that it's climate change too. So they, on one hand, they're going to make these grand, predictions that turn out to be true, which never do. But and then on the other hand, they'll be like, "Oh, any change is climate change." So they don't really seem to want to pick one, and they'll point out the same thing on the other hand, but the difference in the point being is that from their point of view, it's humans that are contributing to it. The climate skeptic point of view is that Earth natural the temperature, the storms, the sea ice, all that kind of stuff changes naturally. So it's not caused by humans. So that's the difference there. You can't really say both sides, say the same thing when that's not really true. So, like I say, I wanted to make a video on this because the evidence is like the evidence really isn't there for climate change being this big issue, especially the whole idea that it's caused by humans. For the simple reason that the climate alarmists never seem to be able to make a prediction that turns out to be right. You have the famous Al Gore one, which most, in fact, I don't know if I know of a prominent scientist that disagreed with him on the whole. The Arctic sea ice is going to be gone by 2012 or 2013. I don't remember which year he said. But not only that, there was actually more sea ice. There was actually points in time to where ships, I believe it was in the 1800s or the 1900s, or the early to mid 1900s, like I say, don't quote me on the year. I don't remember, but I know hearing of stories where ships were able to, sail through the north, like up by, northern Canada, Alaska, Greenland, all that area. And now you can't even come close to doing that. So we know that humans aren't causing climate change, and we're definitely not warming, because there were points in time to where CO2 levels were much, much higher than they were now, and we're still here. The hottest year on record, at least in the States, was I think 1936 or 34. It was in the 1930s, and CO2 levels were below 300 parts per million. Now I believe they're around 400 parts per million. So the left's whole, the climate change alarmist position that CO2 is what drives climate is, it's not true, because if the hottest year was, I think it was 280 parts per million, now it's around 400. That doesn't make any sense. It should be the opposite. But like I say, their positions make no sense. And because of the whole social proof and the amount of times it's spewed at us by the government, people just go along with it. There's generally three groups when it comes to this kind of thing. It's the adamant climate change believers. It's the people that just go along to get along. Maybe they're not necessarily sold on either side, but because it's the cool thing to do, they side with the climate alarmists. And then there's the genuine skeptics that generally, have a pretty good idea what they're talking about. And the reason why climate skeptics are so much better at debating these topics is that the climate alarmists, especially the everyday one, like an actual climate scientist would be tough to have a debate with, but not that you would still lose if you really knew what you were talking about. But the everyday climate change, believer, they can't tell you anything. They can't tell you the current CO2 levels. They can't tell you any past CO2 levels. They can't tell you the temperature difference between now and 100 years ago or 50 years ago. They know absolutely nothing. Like absolutely nothing. They're just repeating what they had told to them. And that just goes to show just how, I guess, poor their critical thinking skills are, because for me, you get zero respect when it comes to this kind of stuff if you don't even know the current CO2 levels compared to different points in time in the past, the current temperatures compared to different points of time in the past. Because if you don't even know that stuff, that's like talking about having a debate on economics and not even knowing supply and demand. Like that's the most basic of base. That's having a mathematics debate. I mean, if you could do that, let's just pretend you could, and not even know how to do addition and subtraction. Like you don't even know two plus two. And that's where these kind of people are at. They're the kind of people that don't even know two plus two because they don't know anything. So that's what I said. And like I said, I've never had a person online or in person who challenged me on my points when it comes to this kind of stuff that actually knew the data. Not one. And that's a crazy thing. I mean, I've never debated a climate scientist, so I mean, sure they would. I mean, a lot of their data is plagiarized. Basically, they just mess with it to fit their narrative, or they'll just start it at a certain point in time to where they'll get the desired narrative, and they'll end it at a certain point in time to get the desired outcome. So that's kind of the whole going full circle. The point of this video is that I want to continue to provide evidence because I know there's always people, even though they completely ignore my past videos that show that whenever I make a claim in a video about how climate change is BS, they'll be like, "Oh, where's your evidence?" And yet they completely ignore videos like this. So I'm going to keep making videos like this because the truth needs to get out there. And we're having kids in public schools being forcibly indoctrinated by not just climate change people. Like Extinction Rebellion's pretty radical. Like, come on. And one of their top guys just came out and says, yeah, the goal is socialism. We don't really care all that much about the climate. And that's pretty much every climate change person, even Greta Thunberg, the Green New Deal person along with AOC said, yeah, it's more about socialism. And that's the one thing that really bothers me is that they're just lying to people. It's about socialism. It's not about climate change. But anyway, I'm not going to get into all the hypocritical points behind that. I've done that before. So anyway, I'll leave it there. Like I say, I wanted to make a video that kind of backs up my positions in this kind of stuff because whenever you make these videos, people think that you're just blabbering out of your butt and you don't got any evidence behind your claims. Well, like I say, here it is. So anyway, I'll leave it there. If you like the video, make sure to hit that like and subscribe and donate via PayPal in the description and stay tuned for more videos.